There's a parallel between drug users doing it and oppressed colonial people doing it as well. A parallel that was noted by Fernandez from the University of Chicago when he did a talk about the drug user propelled movement, because this is what this is. This is a drug user propelled movement. It is a movement of oppressed people taking it on themselves to do something for themselves. It was discovered, the anti-addictive effect was discovered by Howard Lutzoff in 1962. He was a 19-year-old college student who was addicted to heroin, who took a dose of Iboga just for the experience and woke up the next day realizing he wasn't physically dependent. It's an undeniable opiate interrupter. Now, I don't have the research to back that up. I've got 200 people that I've treated, and nobody wants to kill me. So if you take a junkie into a room and you tell him it's going to do something, I can walk down, and it doesn't do it, I'm going to get my ass killed. So that's my evidence. It's the only entheogen that can do this. Now, people have anecdotal stories about someone taking some acid and coming out of it. Yeah, that might happen once or twice. If that happened with acid or psilocybin, there would be a lot of people who are physically dependent seeking that. This is the only entheogen that does that. And I think that's really important in how this relates to the wider entheogen movement. Because although we can tell folks that this has changed my life, I feel better about my mother, I'm at ease with my sexuality, in terms of like the straight world, you know, they might just say that's some tree-hugging shit. But if you tell them that an opiate-dependent person, a heroin addict, took it on Monday and Tuesday is not physically dependent on opiates, that's a door in. And I'll give you an example. I've had many examples, but there's a guy named Al, a young guy who lived in Jersey, who's here right now, but I won't point him out, who's addicted to heroin. He's Cuban descent. His mother was a hard-working immigrant woman, never read Terence McKenna, you know, never read any of this esoteric shit, just went to work every day, got her little house in Jersey, worked 60 hours a week, and her son is sick in the basement doing dope every day. We take him, and I remember because when the mothers come and drop someone off, especially an ethnic mother like that, she put a lot of pressure on me, and I remember her saying with tears in her eyes, you know, take my son, take care of him. He went through the experience. He came out the next day or 3 days later when we dropped him off, tired, but no longer physically dependent. He's had his ups and downs, but he's doing really good. A week after I did this, I got a phone call from his mother saying that she has a friend whose daughter was really depressed, wanted to kill herself. Do you think this could help? She made the jump. She made the jump. And I think that is significant, and that maybe is part of what Iboga can bring. And I'll get back to what I was talking about, oppressed people. I feel, and I'll just say it, God picks the lowest of the low. Pygmies, Bantu, colonized junkies, to be the messenger. And this is one message. And I think it's a doorway for all these plants that we know what they do. But if they have a bunch of junkies, and there's a bunch right here, but you don't have to watch your wallet because they ate the sacrament. And you can do all the tests you want about safety. I was in Gabon for probably a total of 4 months out of the last year, 4.5, and I've seen it taken by children, pregnant women, dogs, and birds. So what I call that is the pygmy proof. It's pygmy proven and junkie tested. Ibogaine also represents a choice for drug users, for people who have no choice, especially because it is a drug user to drug user community. Listen, I'm all in favor of testing and bringing it into the institutions, but we got to remember what those institutions are. Do we really want to bring these beautiful substances into these fucking hospitals? I don't know. I mean, maybe we have to change the hospitals because they're not temples. They're not temples of anything but public health bullshit, okay? Forgive me. Ibogaine represents a choice for drug users. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's a guy named Charlie Bag of Donuts, okay? And Charlie Bag of Donuts was a Lower East Side character he was a Lower East Side character, an incredible character. And Charlie had been through a lot of stuff over the last 20 years. Prison, child abuse. You couldn't walk into a store with Charlie. He's a brilliant guy, but you couldn't go into a store with him because he was going to boost and fill up his pockets, you know? And he also had some mental health issues. They didn't call him Bag of Donuts for nothing. And Charlie had done Ibogaine years before, and came to accept his gender identity issues. Once in a while, Charlie wore a dress, you know. But he was homeless. He was poor. So my thing was like, am I going to give you this? Are we going to give you this and then put you back in the homeless shelter? You know, it wouldn't be fair, you know, to have this incredible life-changing experience and drop you back into the shit. And so he kind of agreed with me. He was a smart guy. And one day I got a call from him, and he was frantic. So I went and I met him. We were walking down Lafayette, and he was screaming at cars, and he was saying, everybody has told me no. My welfare worker told me no. I've been to too many detox, so I've used up my card. They told me no. The social services told me no. The homeless shelter told me no. And now you're telling me no. So I said yes. And we did it. And he went back into the shelter, and exactly what we thought would happen immediately happened immediately. But 10 days later, he went and met his parole officer. Something clicked. He said it clicked a week later. He called me up 4 days into it. You know, he said he was totally wasted. He said, I just hit a lick. You know, I got 500 Oxycontins, a mountain bike, and a bottle of Viagra, you know? And I was like, Charlie, be careful. But something clicked a week later. And Charlie he got off the paper, got off the probation, got off the parole, yeah. And he split, and he went down to a southern state, and he's doing good. He's working 12 steps, which is one modality. It doesn't have to be everyone's, but it's working good for him. So he made the choice. And this isn't just for drug users, you know. This is something that I had to come to, because I didn't want to have anything to do with some yogi, high colonic woman who wants to, you know, I don't know what, you know. At first, that was my prejudice, until I ended up doing a session for a friend of mine who was busy, an Ibogaine therapist, with a guy who was an accountant from Chicago. And you see my look on my face. I mean, that's judgment on my part. You know, 2.2 kids, you know, he was having some problems. It turned out to be one of the most significant treatments on my side that I've ever had. And it really opened me up to to do this work with other folks. I've seen incredible things happen besides the drug dependence. People coming into themselves in terms of sexual identity, abuse, abandonment, and just also that well-being that we're talking about that's so hard to define for something. You know, I'll tell you, we've also been working with therapists who have been using Ibogaine during their sessions or before their sessions. We give someone a dose. I do a little bit of this, you know, a little bit of Bwiti before we start, and then we send them in. And it's been remarkable work. There's a guy named Jay who just went in to a session last week after doing a low dose of Ibogaine. This is low dose therapy. And he was able to recover a suicide attempt that he completely forgotten. One of the problems with this is it sounds like snake oil. It sounds too good to be true. And that's been one of the big issues that we've had with explaining to people. And folks like me are out of our minds because we can't believe it. I can't believe it. But virtually every user, whether they go back to using or not, has reported a positive effect, at least to me. Not everyone has the same experience with drug sensation, you know. Some people have to do it over and over again, or some people do it and get better with their drug use. In terms of a harm reduction tool, I've seen people change the way they do drugs, from shooting to sniffing, maybe a little bit less chaotic. Maybe there's longer periods of time. There's a young guy named Mike who had been using Ibogaine. He's used Ibogaine, I think, he's here, I don't know exactly how many times, I won't embarrass you, I think 12 times in the last 5 years, a full dose of Ibogaine. It's a lot. And you might say that that is a failure, but what we've seen, other than the fact that he quit his normal job, I mean, that happens a lot too, he has lessened his use. Over the almost 5 years, he has gone from using every day, and this is a guy who's gone through 30 detoxes, 30 or 35. What that cost you as a taxpayer, I don't know, for those of you who pay taxes. But what I've seen, what he's seen is that his use has gone down. He's gone from shooting drugs to sniffing drugs, which is significant in terms of harm reduction. And he's used for probably a total of 8 months over the last 4.5 years. That's a success. I want to talk a little bit about the Bwiti effect on my practice, I guess you would call it. Neil introduced me as a psychotherapist a little while ago. I was looking behind me, trying to find out who he's talking about.